Okay. No, I want to record.
It is recording now.
Okay, awesome, great. And I'll share my screen and again, and we have Nick going first. We can't hear you yet.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, so my career path really started at Cal State LA in the MA program. I was doing a lot of research at archives, and I had a real reverence for primary resources. So I wanted to actually move into that venue, just doing something with primary resources. I decided that archives were probably the best fit with what I wanted to do. And immediately after Cal State LA, I pursued a master's degree in library and information science at San Jose. I also did an internship that the CSU actually paid for at Smithsonian Institution, which was great. Then I came back to California, and I started working at the Port of Los Angeles archives while I was working on my master's degree in library science. And then after that, right as soon as I graduated, I got hired at the Margaret Herrick Library, which is the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences library, the Oscars. And while I was doing that, I was also subbing at LA Public Library. I got to know some of the librarians there, and I decided that it might be a better fit with me, with what I wanted to do. Eventually I ended up in the history department, which has been perfect because I do get to do more traditional librarianship and also work with primary resources that I love. So yeah, that was sort of my my pathway, as it were. So while I was at Cal State LA, I worked on perspectives 2 years in a row, which actually turned out to be really great. Because I do a lot of book reviews, I do a lot of writing, and knowing how to edit. And I get called on to actually help other people edit their work, so that was really helpful. I was also involved with File for Data. Excuse my nerves. I was involved with File for Data, and my connection with that actually helped me get one of my jobs. I went to a luncheon and got to know people. So, questions, I guess. Yeah. So my advice working at network, obviously I got at least 2 of my jobs via networking, just getting to know people, talking, and you know, getting to know names. People remembered me and my interest in history, and obviously my credentials in history, and got a few jobs. Be open to new opportunities. I say this because I was so single-mindedly focused on being an archivist. But when I actually got into the field, it wasn't quite what I expected it to be. There was a lot of administrative behind the scenes information like metadata, which even today I can't deal with. Cultivate your interest. When I was at Cal State LA, my focus was the Southwest United States and Mexico, and now working at the library, I'm actually in charge of purchasing books for that section. So that is my section. And the other thing was I had a interest in film. Dr. Andy sort of worked with me on that because I wasn't really sure. I always looked at film as kind of like frivolous cultural history, but he really helped me sort of change that, and that came in handy when I was working at the Oscars, obviously, and the other, and it's helped me at the public library too. I do a lot of book reviews for film-related books, and I've actually had some authors contact me, gotten a lot of programs out of that here and there. So that's been it's been good, you know, and it was something that I didn't really want to cultivate, but I did, and it worked out quite nicely. I would say don't have a fixed mindset. I saw a lot of people going through the program that that really just failed, or they couldn't get through. It was some sort of self-fulfilling prophecy that they would fail. They just had it in their mind. Don't be sorry. Just have a growth mindset. Just try working on things. Don't immediately defeat yourself. It can be hard, but you can get through. Just rely on the network of support around you within the history department. And I would say give back. You know, if you have the opportunity to contribute, do it. Things like this, maybe visiting like a class or something like that. Just return what's been given to you through the history program. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Nick. Thank you. We'll get back to you with lots of questions and comments. Next, I would like to welcome Cassandra Hatton. If you want to tell more about your background, because there's a lot.
Thank you. Thank you. When I started at Cal State LA, I had already begun my career. I was working full-time. What got me set on the path where I am now is I had got a job working as a cataloger for an antiquarian book dealer who specialized in the history of science. So we researched, cataloged, and sold books and manuscripts running from the 16th through the 20th century, focusing on science. I had that job for about 3 years and then was hired to manage another antiquarian bookshop in Los Angeles. And it was while I was working there that I decided to get an MA in history. Cal State LA was very attractive to me because the hours were flexible. I mean, there were lots of reasons, right? But it was very possible for me to continue working full time and pay for grad school and not have to quit working to go to grad school. And they were also flexible about letting me kind of create my coursework. Well, I took probably a lot of the same classes that some of, like Colette and I were in classes together. Nick, you and I might have been in a class together. I had some very specific interests, and a lot of my professors were very happy to just let me do a lot of independent studies and come up with, okay, I want to read about this thing, so let's read these 12 books and write a paper at the end of the quarter, and here we go. So I worked full time while doing grad school. I got a job in New York working for an auction house. And sorry, while I was working on my MA, I actually, the bookshop that I was running got closed down. The owner decided to close it. So I started my own business and continued to do what I did on my own while finishing up at Cal State LA. And then I got a job working for an auction house in New York as a senior specialist in books and manuscripts. So I actually moved to New York before I completed my thesis. And it was very painful to try to do the thesis while working at a super high stress auction house in New York. But you know, there's that deadline of like, you have to do it before this date or you have to start all over. So that was very motivating for me. Finished the thesis up, flew out, and did my defense in LA, and that was very fun. And while at Bonham's was the auction house I first worked for in New York, when I was working there, I was doing books and manuscripts. I had a focus on the history of science, and an opportunity fell in my lap. They had these sales that focused on space exploration. And in the picture you see there is me wearing a spacesuit that was flown to the International Space Station. So like clearly like so excited to have this thing on. They were having these sales. The person who was in charge of the sales was leaving, and they were going to stop doing them. And I thought, okay, I know nothing about this. You know, I mean, I know where the moon is, and that's about all I know about space exploration, but I'm willing to figure it out. So they let me be in charge of those sales. And, you know, I have a great fear of failure. So I worked really hard and figured it out. And the first auction was a huge success. And, you know, I made a lot of mistakes. And then learned from them and didn't make them the second, you know, for the second sale. And I got a lot of confidence from doing that. And then I started to do sales focusing on the history of science and technology, and started to build up these sales that didn't exist before at this auction house. And they were getting more and more successful every year. Sotheby's noticed this, so they called me up, and you know, after a few months of negotiation, they poached me over to work for them. And I started doing those sales at Sotheby's as part of the books and manuscripts department. And that was a tremendous amount of work. I mean, I recently finished working several 100-hour weeks. 80-hour weeks is normal. This is changing because I have gone to the CEO of our company and I pitched a business plan for me to have my own department and hiring my own team. So I'm now a global head of department. It's a science and popular culture department. It's a brand new department at Sotheby's. Sotheby's is an auction house that was founded in 1744. So most of the departments there have been there forever. So adding a new department is kind of unheard of. But I wanted to do more. I had a vision for what I wanted to do. I didn't see the opportunities that I wanted there, so I had to make them. And I'm, you know, doing the very short version, but to get to where I am now, I had to fight and hustle, and, you know, like doors were not open to me. Even getting a job really at Sotheby's, I applied to Sotheby's and Christie's beginning in my career, and like they just deleted my application. Like they wouldn't even take a call for me. You know, they didn't care who I was, and I didn't give up. Like you have to keep going. People are going to say no to you in the beginning. Like that is a given. Everybody will say no when you start off. And that is how you're going to be successful, is you just never let no rattle you. You never take no for an answer. If a door isn't open, you find a way to kick it down, burn it down, knock it down, go get a chainsaw and cut your own door in the wall. Like that is how you're going to do it. And if an opportunity isn't there for you, make that opportunity. I don't know how long I've been talking, but I do, if you'd like to know more about what I do, I have a video that I recently did. It's a pilot for a series that we're doing at Sotheby's. I don't know if the sound will work. I haven't had success playing videos in Zoom meetings before, but can everybody hear
Working in an auction house?
Can you hear it?
All types of things going through the galleries, things that you never thought that you'd see before, things that you didn't even know could be sold or existed. But a lot of those things fall into neat categories. It's impressionist art, it's contemporary art, it's oceanic art, it's a watch, it's jewels. And there were so many exciting things that didn't fall into a category that I knew were important, that I knew were valuable, that had amazing stories behind them. But there was nowhere to put them. So I created a new department to be able to do that. Hi, my name is Cassandra Hatton, and I'd like to introduce you to Sotheby's newest department, Science and Popular Culture. This is a department that I created to enable me to sell all of the things that I love. I love spacesuits, I love moon rocks, anything from 17th century manuscript by Galileo to fossils, meteorites. Sotheby's is a place that's known more for selling Basquiat or Monet. But to me, these types of items perfectly fit in a place like this. Enough about the department. Let's go take a look at what I've been working on for the last several months. Here I'm surrounded by several different types of items, ranging from bongo drums to a Nobel Prize to manuscripts to this bust of Leonardo da Vinci. This belonged to Andy Warhol. It was in the factory. It was an incredible inspiration for him. He did a Polaroid series that featured this bust. We really don't know who created it. We do know that it came out of Italy and it looks to be 18th century in style. It's this larger than life piece, much like Da Vinci was, much like Warhol was. Da Vinci was an incredible inspiration to many artists. His work was based on the fundamentals of science, and you can see in the work of Da Vinci that fusion of science and art and creativity. This is exactly the type of item that I love, that creates that Venn diagram where you're overlapping science and art. These are the bongo drums that belong to my favorite scientist and a personal inspiration to me, Richard Feynman. Feynman won the Nobel Prize in Physics in the late 60s for his work on quantum electrodynamics. Don't ask me to explain that to you. Very few people even know what that is. This is first edition of his most famous work. Feynman never wrote a book in the conventional sense. This is a collection of stories that he told to his buddy Ralph Layton, who played the bongos with him. And this copy is the signed first edition. When he was 25, was recruited to go to Los Alamos and help develop the atom bomb. He had just freshly finished his PhD, married his high school sweetheart, Arlene, who was dying before he moved down to Los Alamos. This is a love letter that he wrote to his wife 18 months after she died. It is the most powerful love letter that I know of. It's very famous. Contrasting it with these are some other physics and mathematical manuscripts that Feynman wrote. To see the brilliance reflected in this work contrasted with who he was as a human, and having things like this that really help us understand who he was and what he went through. He was also an artist, and this is a gorgeous painting. I wish I knew who she was, a mystery woman painted by Richard Feynman. He painted under the pseudonym of Kofi. He loved to paint. He loved to play the drums. He loved to crack jokes. He was just a human and just a massive inspiration. This is exactly the kind of item that I love to see. This is a one-off, handmade model of 150 different human eyes. This was handmade for an eye surgeon in the 19th century in Barcelona. Barcelona was the world capital for eye surgery at the time. And each eye depicts a different ailment, disease, deformity. This one looks like it's got a worm coming out. We've got some scalpels and needles going in, syphilitic eyes. And you're looking up close, some of them are just disgusting. But if you take a step back, this is an incredible piece of art. And these are the kinds of things that I love, where you're constructing this Venn diagram of really great scientific, technical pieces that can also be independently admired for their aesthetic qualities. This is the skull of the famous Triceratops. The Triceratops was a four-legged dinosaur that lived during the Cretaceous period, which was about 66 to 154 million years ago. It's enormous. It is at the upper limits of the size for this species, which tells us that it died of old age. What's really incredible about this skull is that when it was dug up, it was in one piece. 80% of this bone mass is original. Normally what you're going to see is either no original bone or partial original bone. To have something that's this complete is incredibly rare. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure sharing some of my favorite items with you. And if you can, come see them in person. We're going to have an exhibition in a few weeks, and I'd be more than happy to take you around and show these items in person.
Nice.
working in an auction house.
Yeah, so that kind of sums up in a way what I do is I take objects. Some of these objects may not have any value. I mean, one of the items that I sold last year, I did the first sale at any auction house focused on hip hop as a cultural movement. And the top item in the sale was Biggie's crown. If any of you remember that, there's a photo of him wearing his crown. The crown's a $6 plastic crown. We sold it for $600,000. Right. So for me, it's about telling the story of the item. What's the history of the item? What's the cultural impact? And how many people can I convince that this is important? How many rich people, of course, right? Because like I'm selling to rich people, but and it's super fun, you know, like I take an object and many of them don't look like they're anything. They could just look like a piece of garbage. But if you dig in, you can find something amazing about it. And there's some real power in this because I'm the person who's telling people what's valuable. So I've had the opportunity to take things that were created by unsung heroes. Like I sold an early rape kit coming from the assistant of the woman who invented the rape kit. The rape kit was like credited to having been invented by a man named Vitolo. Not true. He stole the designs from a woman. Marty Goddard, who is the person who invented it. I just sold that to the Smithsonian. I've sold the prototype for the first pregnancy test. So I get to go and like handle these things. And if I say I think this is important and valuable, somebody shows up with money and buys it. So it's a fun job when I'm not working 100 hours a week.
Wow.
All right.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much. I know that there'll be lots of questions. Let's see. Gabriella.
Hi, super cool, Cassandra and Nick. Thank you so much for sharing, and definitely some of the experiences that you shared really resonate with me. So I'm so happy to join everyone today. I think back on my experience at Cal State LA really positively. So my name is Gabby. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the volunteer manager and a community organizer with ACLU of Southern California. So the American Civil Liberties Union, or ACLU, has been around for about 100 years, and it's one of the largest social justice nonprofit organizations in the United States. That's really been at the forefront of the fight for civil rights since its founding in 1920 to protect the rights of marginalized communities, including workers, immigrants, women, LGBTQ people, the poor, and people who are imprisoned. And, you know, traditionally, like what you said, Cassandra, about Sotheby's, like really resonated about ACLU because I think historically it's not been a very diverse organization. And it's been like a very elitist organization. Many folks think about the ACLU and just think that it's a legal organization. And that's been true for a really long time. But I am like so lucky in that I am able to be a part of sort of like this kind of pioneering era in the organization where we are still, you know, using legal and policy work, but really connecting it to building awareness and building power within marginalized communities. So that's really cool. But, you know, similar to what you said, Cassandra, we've had to really fight, myself and sort of a part of my team have really had to fight and convince and prove ourselves. When I joined the team, it was I joined as like the first fellow that my team ever had, because normally the fellows were all legal fellows, they were attorneys. And they, you know, they were from like Ivy League universities, you know, so this was like a test run that they did where they opened up this fellowship, and I joined a 2-person team. Since that time, we are now a 6-person team. So there's been, you know, definitely a lot of challenges, but a lot of growth there. And so I just feel really lucky to be a part of that. So in my role, I work with attorneys. I work in partnership with attorneys and policy experts to engage marginalized communities and their allies. And we try, our work is really to raise awareness, not only about socioeconomic challenges, but ways to solve these issues through diverse ways of engaging state and local governments. And through my work, I've really had the privilege of traveling every year, except for last year and this year, of course, but normally every year I go to Sacramento, to the state capitol. And I'm able to meet with legislators. I've, through my work, had the opportunity to travel all over the country to meet with fellow organizers and civil rights pioneers, from Alaska to Washington, D.C. So that's been like a really cool experience. And really, like, you know, when working to, you know, pass different policies or pass different laws, like been able to witness or really be a part of history in the making, like every single day, which is like just so cool for me. And just like a little kind of side note, when I was figuring out kind of what my next steps after getting my BA were, I was kind of contemplating, you know, the different sort of paths. I'll talk about this a little bit later because my goal was not to be a history teacher, right? That's what sort of everyone assumes when you're studying history in undergraduate. And so I actually did contemplate going to law school, and I did contemplate, you know, studying public policy, but those just really didn't feel like the right fit for me. And so part of my sort of journey was really figuring out that path and being, I think, creative in sort of creating a path for myself that I didn't really see the direct path existed before. So just kind of a little bit of a step back, because I've worked with at ACLU since I graduated. I first joined as a fellow in the fall of 2016, and then I was hired as a full-time staff member in the summer of 2017. But I came to Cal State LA as kind of like a non-traditional student. I worked in the corporate world for about 10 years, and against everyone's advice, family, friends, professional colleagues, I decided to go back to school around 2013. I had been a community college student, you know, I grew up in South Central, so I came back from like an economically challenged background. So I was not able to complete my higher education, but I always wanted to. And so in 2013, I was like, I can't not do this anymore. Like I really was no longer feeling passionate about the work that I was doing. And so I decided to go back to school. I had a couple of community college credits to complete, and then I transferred to Cal State LA. So I actually came to Cal State LA as a transfer student, as a history major. So I do want to take a little bit of a step back and focus kind of on a couple of things that I feel are unique to my journey. First, I made a big career switch from working in fashion to now working in the nonprofit and social justice field. And second, I didn't, and I still don't share the same academic or professional experience as many of my peers, and that's okay. So when I was attending Cal State LA and people learned I was majoring in history, like people in my life, as I mentioned, like the number one question I got was like, so you want to be a teacher? And teachers are amazing. My partner is a teacher, but that wasn't really my passion. I think in more ways than one, I'm like a very non-traditional person. But 5 years ago, my path was not to become a teacher, but that's what felt like, you know, when I was at Cal State LA, it felt like that was kind of the most common path, or like the clearest path for history students was centered around teaching in academia. But that really wasn't, you know, it didn't feel like it was for me. It was an option, but that was not where my passion was. So I was really excited when I heard about this panel today, because I think it's so important and so valuable, because when I was a student, I really didn't feel like there was a lot of support or mentorship for anyone who didn't necessarily want to be a teacher or go straight into postgraduate studies. So I spent a lot of my time at Cal State LA figuring out what I was going to do after graduation. And at the time, that question gave me so much anxiety. It was so stressful. Like I thought about it constantly. But now looking back, I see like what a huge opportunity that was. I think what Nick said earlier was really particularly like connected with me because I feel like it really gave me sort of the opportunity and the freedom to really explore my interest and create that path for myself. So I can go ahead and I think jump into sort of the things that I felt particularly helpful in my situation. I just have one slide, Dr.
Nope.
Flager.
Yep, thank you.
So first is really find your passion. My journey was really unconventional and at times like really difficult, to be honest. But my passion for finding the right place for me kept me going until I found what made my journey worthwhile. So when I was an undergraduate history student, I really focused on US history. And at that time, I don't know if you all are still doing the diversity electives, Dr. Flager, but I chose the race, gender, and sexuality path because that was what was really interesting to me. I think definitely leverage your experience. I can remember feeling really inadequate at the time because I didn't have a ton of internships or really the ability to do internships at the time because I was a fully independent student working full-time and living on my own. But I later realized, you know, that my experience was still really valuable. I had 10 years of professional project management experience under my belt by the time I came to Cal State LA. I just had to highlight, and you know, some of us, because I've been like a working student as well, and you know, working in customer service or in retail or whatever you have to do to kind of get through. But just, you know, identify and highlight those transferable skills and connect them to the positions that you want to attain. The other thing is that opportunity is really all around you. The way I was able to bridge the gap between my past experience and my current career was actually through a combination of my pre-Cal State volunteer work, joining the Perspectives team, and internships that helped me demonstrate my commitment to the social justice work I get paid to do now. And it was also really important to make sure this was really the right path for me. I think Nick mentioned earlier, you know, sort of having this vision for himself of what he thought he really wanted to do, and that ended up not being the right fit for him. So I think that's really definitely important, is if you think that you want to do something, try it out. Because, you know, you're going to commit 4+ years of education to that, plus, you know, the rest of your working life. So make sure that it's a good fit for you. Dream big. You know, early in my journey, I remember like periodically searching various job sites and coming across a job opening at the ACLU that I was definitely not qualified for at the time. But I remember thinking like, oh man, that would be so cool to work there. And so I studied all the job qualifications, trying to figure out how I could build up the experience that I needed for that type of job, while really never thinking I would actually get it one day, right? Or also like I would come across extraordinary people who sounded like they had dream jobs, and you know, if I had the opportunity, I would talk to them and ask them, you know, how'd you get that job? Or if it was a well-known person, you know, I would research them or read interviews where they talked about their experience and their path, which gave me lots of ideas for what it took, and what I could do to get to those places. So keep in mind that when I graduated, I still definitely didn't have the experience needed to work for ACLU, but I found a way. You know, so what Cassandra said about like figure it out, find that path, build that path for yourself, and that was through my fellowship. But even then, you know, even getting the fellowship, that was a foot in the door, but it was definitely not guaranteed that I would get hired. But regardless, I would have volunteered or built my experience in other ways until I got to where I wanted to be. I think it just was sort of a combination of building that experience, building that knowledge, being open to learning, and to be honest, being at the right place at the right time with the right opportunity as well, because I got offered the job immediately after the 2016 election, when things we know a lot of things changed at that time. So, you know, it's a combination of like really hard work and I see folks smiling. It's a combination of hard work and the right opportunity. So you have to really stay at it. And then I think, you know, really give it your all. The words of Dr. Flager still accompany me every single day. C's get degrees, but they don't get jobs. The reality is it's really competitive out there. I work with lawyers, policy experts, PhDs, Ivy League graduates, and it's important to do whatever you can to set yourself apart. And that isn't limited to grades. I think for myself, it's one, like my perspective in the world. You know, I think I have a very, again, like non-traditional view of what learning and what power and what, you know, community can look like. And I think that kind of distinguished me from the time that I was in my fellowship and sort of brought something to the table that really what didn't exist in the organization at the time. But also, you know, I worked with like really closely with my Cal State LA professors who like were really supportive and really encouraging of me and really helped me develop my research and writing skills, which have also just been so important in my work, especially like with the really brilliant folks that I work with is so crucial. And then, yeah, like I said, you know, really focusing on my particular interest areas. And I think, you know, when you know something and you know something that's different than other people and that passion like really shows, again, like that will set you apart. And you know, it might not always be everyone's cup of tea, but just stick to what you love and you will find the right place for yourself. So finally, I'll share some resources that were like happen to be really accessible and also simultaneously like really the most helpful to me. Which, you know, first of all is like your fellow students. There's so many amazing people from diverse experiences and backgrounds all around you who are sharing similar struggles and journeys. And, you know, together you all know a lot. So I know it's hard to juggle school and work and your professional lives, but connecting with your fellow students is not only an amazing professional resource, but can be really crucial to supporting your mental and emotional well-being. Because I know that's, you know, it's really hard when you're juggling all of those things. Definitely professors. Your professors hold a wealth of information, not only from their personal journeys, but through their experience with countless students through the years. They genuinely care about your success and can serve as amazing mentors, both related to their school and outside projects and relationships. For example, I got involved with Perspectives and Phi Alpha Theta through my classes with Dr. Flager, who was also my advisor, and my housing internship through Dr. Flores of the Chicano Studies Department. Also the Cal State LA Career Center, really, I mean, that, you know, it kind of, folks always will say like, go to the career center, go to this job board, go to this whatever. And you're like, yeah, okay, it's there. But really when I got connected to the Cal State LA Career Center, like that made a huge difference. Both like while I was a student as an alumni. The Career Center offered resume review, which like a strong resume, as someone who has done hiring, like a really good, strong resume is so crucial. They did career advisory. They had job and internship fairs and workshops. And then their database was actually how I found my internships, both at the Los Angeles Law Library and AmeriCorps, and actually subsequently the ACLU. So that is like a really amazing resource. Not gonna lie, there was like a lot of junky stuff there too. But there, like if you really, you know, spend the time digging, like you will find really good opportunities. And then finally, community. I mean, no matter where you're from, there's so many resources in our own communities. We just have to get connected to find the right people and opportunities that might lead you down a path like you never expected. So, you know, through my work, through my community, through, you know, just my personal interest, I've had the privilege of meeting people from all walks of life, and, you know, connecting to all types of organizations. And I think in some ways I am an educator, but I'm also like a non-traditional lifelong student. And I get to, I've gained like knowledge and experience through all types of non-traditional ways and settings. I've yet to, I think in my long term, I would love to get a master's degree because I do love to learn so much. But since I've graduated from Cal State LA, like a lot of my knowledge has come from I've taken really helpful community college classes. I've done amazing workshops through organizations. I've gone to awesome conferences where I've learned amazing things. And so, yeah, the resources are out there. You just have to get connected to them. Yeah, and so I just, want to encourage folks to be open-minded, and it might open up possibilities you never even thought of. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Really, really exciting. Colette, do you want to, I don't think we need the screen. I'm going to stop this and hopefully we can just talk. Hi.
I'm wondering if I could share my screen with you guys.
Absolutely. Yes.
I should be able to, but it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay. Let's see. Chris, are you the host or do I need to?
Yeah, let me see what I can do.
Okay, I did it. Sorry. Yep. You should be able to now.
Awesome. Can everybody see my screen? Little fun slides. This gives you a little taste of what I do, actually. So it's loading on my end, of course. So academic librarianship. Hi, everybody. My name is Colette Salvatierra once again. You'll hear my name and it's weird. It's fine. I also named my daughter weirdly as well, Persephone. So weird. All right, my educational background. I have a history and BA history with a minor in women and gender studies. I did focus my master's later on in LGBT history. That's my big thing that I did and focus was LGBT history in the 1950s in LA. I did also modern Europe, medieval. This is how Cassandra and I had a lot of fun classes together, as well as modern US. It may seem like a hodgepodge of things to put together, but at the time they all spoke to each other. Medieval taught me to look at things differently and then apply it to US. Definitely European studies, because they talked to a lot to American just nuance and milieus of the time helped as well. Then I have an MLIS degree from UCLA. I'm a class of 2017. Yes, I do have a lot of student debt. If that is a question, it should be. Yes, you do accumulate some student debt for sure. I'm not going to deny that. So my work, I am a research librarian at LaSalle College Preparatory. I've been there for 4 years, almost 5. So what does a research librarian do for high school kids? It really does everything that we take for granted. You guys know how to do research, right? You know what a database is. You guys know where to get the primary sources, the secondary sources. You know what they mean. You know how to read them, or you're being taught how to read them. Well, in the high school level, I'm doing that for students. I'm helping them out, really gather that thesis, knowing what that means, knowing what a proper source is, and really tell them doing research on Google is not the same as doing research on a database. It's not the same thing, nor should you cite it. No, Google is not your best friend. And Google is not there to just provide you free information. Remember, if it's free, you are the product. So that's what I teach them a lot as well. And as an adjunct librarian at Los Angeles City College and Pierce College, I do actually the same thing. I start teaching students who are from high school, transitioning from high school to college, or non-traditional students, or very different, XYZ first gen, English as a second language students, international students, everything under the umbrella that goes into community college. I help out as well with the same things as how to use a database, how to find resources, how to understand academic work, how to really talk in that aspect of academia. There is a different language, a different culture when it comes to academia that we take for granted, and I come from a very community college. That's where I started my educational background. So I understand that it's hard to grasp that language and then continue on to a 4-year institution, right? So definitely it's like, I understand where they're coming from. I do see a lot of anxiety from students, and that's what I do as a librarian. I'm half therapist, half academic resource for sure. Oh, so why academic librarianship? If you're not into teaching, like I was dreading it because I'm an introvert and I'm like, I cannot be in the classroom and have like dirty faces looking at me and be entertaining for that long. That's not who I am. Librarianship really called to me. Besides that, we get to wear cardigans all the time because the library is cold. And you also just communicate it with people in a different way, especially in an academic way. I couldn't do public librarianship. I did an internship. I tried it out and I'm like, no, I can't. I can't do it. I need to be able to talk to someone in an academic level because that's what I know. Maybe that's a little like narrow focus on my end, but I feel comfortable talking to you about books. I don't feel comfortable talking about anything else. So therefore, I went with my strengths is academic. I can talk to you about that. I network well with faculty because I'm able to understand what's going on there. I'm able to talk well with just students because I understand the trajectory they're going from either high school, community college, and their goals, even if it's just not going to a 4-year institution, it is, I want to go get a job. Why do I need to know how to research? Because your employer would like to know that you can do something beyond Google, or at least Google well, without having to fall into the trappings of false information. And with the 2016 election, that created a big boost for librarians of, I told you so. This is why we're important. This is why you need to know how to research. So another reason for why academic librarianship is, it's what you do. The natural transition when you think about what do I do with my history degree? You already know how to research. You already know how to talk about your stuff to your fellow family members who say, why did you major in history? Why? You already know how to do obscure, convincing to people. So might as well apply them to like why you should use a database instead of Google, why you should, trust an academic source versus an obscure website. You're already built for it. 4 years, you've been trained. You know what to do. Might as well just continue that format while you go on. And then we have my advice for you guys is apply to an ALA accredited program early. Start looking into are you willing to travel? Because California only has 2 programs, the one at UCLA and CSU San Jose. Both are great programs, but it really depends on how you feel you can cater. I needed something more traditional. That's why I went to UCLA. They had great connections when it comes to internships. I didn't have to hunt for them. They came to us and they gave a presentation. I like that. I don't like hunting and competing with people. Like I said, mentioned, introvert, can't do it. So therefore I needed something more that I could understand and group with. Apply to campus librarian jobs the first semester or quarter. UCLA, they just cater your first semester to apply to any library job. You can try out cataloging, you can try out just anything you want. I did research, so I was focusing with graduate students doing research at the young library. You can work with undergrads if that's what you want to do. You do a lot of outreach. You feel like you can sell yourself and the resources. That's outreach with undergrads. So definitely start looking for jobs early so you can have that as your repertoire of experience. Do diverse internships. Definitely, I went into this thinking with an MLS degree, I'm going to do archiving because I started volunteering at one gay and lesbian archives since the beginning of my graduate degree because I'm like, this is what I want to do. But then I did an internship at Windward, and that's a private school with 7 to 12 graders. Working with 7th graders is awesome. I did not expect that from me. I didn't have to be there for them all the day, but working with them in their research project, getting them from point A of understanding just educational background of an article to implementing an actual presentation, a actual thing that works for their scientific exploration. That was awesome. And I love that. That's why I decided, hey, school librarianship is awesome. And then I did an internship at LACC, and I love communicating with students who have a similar background that I do. And that's where I landed. Diverse internships lets you know where you feel comfortable, because remember, the MLAS degree can go into many different routes. It's just not you being in a library, traditional public library. You can go into academic, law. Law, definitely you need a GED for. You can go into science, anything, medical libraries, anywhere. Informatics, you can do anything with information. You want to police Google, you could do that. If you guys know Sophia, who wrote about basically how Google and data, it is racist and categorizes, Sophia Noble categorizes the infrastructure to just look at Black women as sexual objects. You could do that too with an MLAS degree. It lets you do that, to look at how data works. How is the algorithm working against you or for you? So you could do so many things. So internships is very important. Another thing I would advise is take an education class like history 4960. This is a different number than when I went to. It's 498 back in the day. Why is it important? Because most of your job is teaching how to use a library. People don't know. People have assumptions about what the library is. And even if you take yourselves into consideration, you go into your Cal State LA library, right? You go there. Do you know where your librarian is? No, you don't, right? You just see students there. How to check out, how to get a book. All the books are all around you. You have computers. You go to the second floor. That's where the librarians are in. But there is a wall, an ivory tower between you and them. So between you and the access to information. If you take your 4960, you will learn how to bridge that gap. Learn how to teach what you have. Learn the resources that you do have at the library. Connect with the student there, because automatically a student who goes into the library doesn't know that, one, the librarian exists, and two, that they have resources that can help you. So definitely learn how to teach and promote your own resources. You will teach the public, you will teach faculty, you will teach students about library resources, how to use databases, how to plan effective one-shots. You need to learn how to do a lesson plan that effectively captures your audience in a one-shot, meaning you don't see them again. You only see them once, and that's for 30 minutes. And that's because their teacher made them go in there, and they may gloss you over and ignore you, right? And then be like, well, what did she say? And then the teacher will say, you better learn this because you will need to do this for your research paper. So it's your job now to create an effective lesson plan that captures their attention for 30 minutes. And History 4960 will help you do the lesson plan for sure. Because remember, you're gonna have 30 minutes with these teens or with these non-traditional students, how to capture their attention. Learn to network. Definitely learn to network. The community of librarianship, especially academics, is very, very small. So everybody knows everybody. So let's say you do an internship at LACC, you know the chair, you know her well, Barbara Vasquez. You are able to have her speak and do a letter of recommendation for you, and then you're able to do another internship somewhere else. You're able to get a job somewhere else. So definitely learn to network. Be nice. Don't be mean. Become comfortable with advertising yourself. And this is very important because you have unique set of skills. You look at information differently. You look at education differently. It could be from your background. It could be from your ethnicity. It could be from X, Y, and Z. And that makes you valuable. The librarianships, we're only like 5% who are Latino. 3% are Black. 2% are Asian Americans. So definitely your background, advertise yourself, know how you look at education, how you look at information, how you look at yourself is different and can connect to people around you that other librarians may not know how to do so. So definitely know how to advertise yourself to those, you can promote the librarians well. And so people can become librarians, we can have more diversity, as well as promote resources that look obscure, like why do I need a database? Number one question I get from teens, why databases? But then we teach them later on. All right, that's it for me. Any questions? I'm here.
Thank you so much. Let's
How do I stop?
open the floor to questions first of all, I want to say thank you all so very, very much for presenting. I knew it was going to be fascinating, and it is. So, who wants to go first with questions?
I want to go first, actually. I'm from the perspective, one of the editors. I'm Nancy, and I just want to introduce. I just want to ask, how do you guys all feel when you first get into your field? Like, is it, how do you adjust to it? Because I know once you finish your degrees, you find your field. Is there this sense of feeling that's this difference? Like, I just want to know. Yeah, this applies to all of you.
So the question was, how did we adjust after finishing the degree? I guess that for me is hard because I worked the whole time. Like I was working before, working during, and working after. I think I had to adjust to not doing school. Oh my God, I don't have to read a 600-page book and write a 5-page paper about it by Monday. I don't know, was anybody else here, like just going to school full-time and transitioning? I don't think I'm the best person to answer that question.
Yeah, I was doing full-time school and then transitioning to the working field. Definitely, it was hard because right after doing my master's in history, I was stumped with, what do I do now? And then I was in the credential program and I'm like, this is not for me. This is not, like the first quarter, I was like, no. So I was like this dead end of like, oh, what do I do? And this is my advice of apply to an MLAS program early. Definitely, I had to take some classes. So I took the stats requirement. So that helped with the little itch that Cassandra described of like, I don't have to read anymore. And it took some French classes and that helped a lot for sure. So yeah, it was hard to transition, definitely not knowing where you weren't going to land. But once I was in the MLAS program, it felt like home because I was with other introverted people who like libraries as much as I do, and cardigans, of course. And then it was just awesome to be with them. So yeah, it can be hard, and you find your steps and you start to look at what classes you need to meet for your MLAS program. But yeah, it's hard to transition.
What's MLA again? I just want to know.
Yeah, it's Masters in Library and Information Science.
Yeah, because I was going into that. I'm researching that one right now too, so that's why.
Yeah, definitely.
I can chime in, and then I think Colette, there's a question specifically for you after. I will say it's scary. It can be scary. Because I think it's just like any job, you don't 100% know what to expect, not only in the work itself, but I'll speak from my experience. It can be a culture shock too, especially if you're making a switch. Like Cassandra was a little bit different because she maybe had some expectation. But if you're making a switch, or if you're a full-time student, you may be used to functioning a certain way. This is jarred a memory for me where I was coming out of the Cal State LA program, and then joining this organization where I had like a certain assumption, I guess, of like what it was going to be like. And I remember thinking to myself one day, like, there's no syllabus. I don't know what to expect. What people wanted was not super clear. And so it can be hard. And I think that's another reason why it's really important, aside from like the professional opportunities, just like for your personal well-being to, I'm also an introvert, Colette. So it can be hard for me to connect with people. But it's so important just for so many reasons. And even, for you to have that support system to check in with when you are making those changes and maybe experiencing different challenges to sort of help support you through, because it can be hard. I mean, I feel like I'm working my dream job, but that doesn't mean that I don't have headaches and stress every single day.
In my instance, can you hear me?
Mhm.
In my instance, I didn't really get much time to sort of, I guess, analyze. I went literally, I skipped graduation, the graduation ceremony, and went to Washington, D.C., started an internship. And actually, while I was doing that internship, I started working on my library science degree, and then came back. So I didn't really get any time to sort of stop and think about it. It all just kind of happened.
Thank you. I wanted to just chime in for two things. One, Nick, didn't you stay at the Phi Alpha Theta house in Georgetown for your?
No, I didn't. Went through some student program intern, but no, I wish I had.
Why do I have a memory of you doing something with Phi Alpha Theta in DC? No? Okay. I don't know. And then what was the other question I was going to ask? Okay, you all ask more questions and I'll have more questions in a minute. Now I remember what I was going to ask. So Cassandra, does Sotheby's have a either a librarian or a historian in-house?
I mean, many of the people who work at Sotheby's are historians. We actually don't have a librarian in-house. Christie's does. It's embarrassing. We have a library and we have archives. Famously, a big portion of our archives burned in a warehouse fire. It's a thing that happens in New York. Warehouses catch on fire and archives are destroyed. But in terms of historians, most of the specialists have art history degrees or some other related, history related degree. In my former department, which was books and manuscripts, we have two people with library degrees. There's she's a PhD in English actually, but lots of historians, but nobody whose full-time job is to be a librarian. Though I keep pushing for it. I think it's super important to maintain archives and libraries and such. So.
Right. More questions. Yes.
So Cassandra, who does take care of Sotheby's archives if you don't have somebody?
Well, each department maintains their own, like I have my own research library for my department. I have my own archives. We do have offsite archival storage. So there's a company that manages archives for us, but it's a little bit of a nightmare to access records. You know, if I want to see who bought, whatever back in 1987, the database that I work in doesn't go back that far. So then there's like another database that's super old that only like 4 people can access, and that only goes back to 93. And then there's another archive, like database, right? And there's like 1 person left in the company who even knows how to use it or exists. And so I've been pushing for, and we're actually working on it, digitizing all of the old records. Because for us, we're selling things, and there are very few things that haven't been sold before. Like every Monet has been sold once before, right? Like, I mean, except in the category that I work in, most of the things that I sell have never been sold before. But generally everything else in the auction business has. So it's incredibly important to be able to know how to dig in auction house archives and figure out, okay, what sale was this in and how much did it sell for? And, nowadays the buyers and the sellers are confidential unless they choose to have their identity revealed. But it used to be that they would name who bought something in an auction that was part of the public record. And so that's an incredibly important thing to know how to do. And also when you're selling art or anything in the art world, the provenance is super important. Being able to trace that provenance, not only because certain provenances add value, you know, if something belonged to somebody famous. A great example is Jackie O's plastic pearls that sold for, it was like $18,000 for like just shitty dime store plastic pearls. But because they were hers, they sold for a ton of money. If you couldn't, you know, figure out that provenance, they would go in the garbage. So on one hand, it's important to prove value, but also to prove ownership or prove that you have the legal right to sell something, you have to know how to do that. You know, how to do that type of research.
They were plastic?
They were plastic. Looking at, you know, I'll tell you something, Dagoberto. So it sounds tough having just a BA in history, and sounds like we need a minimum of an MA. At least for me, the MA was not required in any way to get my job. I did it because I wanted to. It did give me a lot of skills that were necessary. I know probably in the librarian field, like an MLIS is required. But look, I mean, maybe I'm not the greatest spokesperson to be speaking in a grad school workshop. Like my opinion is like, if you want to do it, you'll find a way to figure it out. And I've never been one to think like I must have the degree to do this and that. I mean, I work with a lot of people who've got Ivy League degrees and PhDs and all sorts of things, and it doesn't mean anything. I found that the most important thing in my world is, can you hustle, and can you work hard, and can you figure it out? And I've met a lot of people who don't have graduate degrees at all, who have become tremendously successful. Many of my clients who are, you know, very, very successful in their lives, a lot of them don't have advanced degrees at all. So, and also being somebody who's still paying off that student debt, what I would say, and what I've found, is that it is important to consider the debt to like income ratio. You know, how much is it going to cost me to get this degree, and how, like, what's my earning potential in this field, you know? So that's an important thing to consider. And maybe there is a career path for you that won't require you to take on more student debt, you know? I have two colleagues that are hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt because they wanted the PhDs and their fields, and the jobs that they have didn't require PhDs. Like, they're working in an auction house, and that's not, you don't need it. So it's important, I think, to have the right reasons for getting your degrees and taking on that debt. If, it's worthy investment in many cases, but you have to think of it as an investment. Is this a wise investment? If you are in a position like me and many other people where debt is a factor, you know.
I can add on to that too, Cassandra. I don't have a graduate degree. A lot of folks that I work with that are very experienced and, you know, are deputy directors, and even my director does not have a graduate degree. So I think it really depends. I mean, I will say I did one semester of a graduate program and then found that that was not the program for me. I think eventually, as I mentioned, I would like to get a master's degree. But the cost is something really to consider. As Cassandra mentioned, hundreds, plural, can be hundreds of thousands of dollars. And, you know, I will say through my own experience, like a higher degree is not necessarily your ticket in anywhere. It can also be, you know, a lot of your working experience as well. So like if you have no working experience in a field you want to work in, but you have a degree, that's not necessarily going to get you in. So it depends. I mean, it depends on what you know, what your field of interest is what I will say. And you know, yes. And I was going to add one more thing. It depends on your field of interest. I lost my train of thought. I'll add it in the chat if I remember. Oh, sorry. What I was going to say, I think, is just echoing what Cassandra said, which is really think about it. Really think about it and think about the why you're considering, I think, a higher degree. And also, you know, is that really what you want to dedicate not only your money, but also your time as well.
Yeah, exactly. So why are you getting the degree? I mean, like when I came out of undergrad, I finished undergrad after doing the 6-year program, and so much, you know, undergrad debt. But I came out at a time where the economy was really bad. A lot of people were going back to graduate school because they couldn't get a job. And, you know, a lot of people were just like, shit, I need income from somewhere. Okay, like I can do this. And I saw a lot of people taking on additional, like just pushing that debt forward because it's like, I need something now. I need to do something now. So I think a lot of people who ended up going to grad school in like 2007, 2008, and that period, or it's like, it was just a shitty situation. And that's just, you know, people had to make the choices they had to make. But it is very important to think about, why are you getting, like, what do you want to do? What do you really honestly want to do? Not the idea, like, do you like the idea of this job or do you want to actually do this job? You know, like the two friends that I have that are hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. One is a PhD in English literature that she got from Oxford. And she loved the romantic idea of having a PhD from Oxford. And she will probably never pay that debt off. And I have another friend who got an MFA in poetry, that he's hundreds of thousands. I mean, I had to say, man, did you really think you were going to make like, you know, a 300,000 a year writing poems? Like, but it didn't. He loved the idea of having that degree. And I'm not in any way saying not to get the degree, but you know, if it's not going to make any difference towards getting a job, it doesn't make sense to do it. There are 100% jobs where the PhD is important and you need to do it. And that is what you should be doing it, unless, you know, you've got some kind of luxury and you've got unlimited funds, like, and you can do it because you want to. Yeah, go for it. I mean, I would do that for sure. I would go back and get like 5 PhDs if somebody was going to pay for them. That would be a dream job, right?
Yeah, and just to add one more thing, like when I say like I want to get a master's degree is because I feel like in the work that I do, I feel like eventually it could help me help like kind of elevate me to the next level in terms of like my understanding, my analysis of the work that I do. But again, it's not in any way required or expected through my job. Actually, the pay scale structure at my work explicitly says that degrees are not considered unless you're an attorney. Obviously you need a JD to be an attorney, and for attorneys and then for attorneys they are paid based on experience, so based on years of practice.
This is such an important discussion. I'm so glad you know, we're having it, because just another alum from our program who ended up going to law school. And I think, Gabby, you were in the class when she shared that she got out of a program here in Southern California, Loyola, and she is now, the debt, of course, accumulated. She now owes $375,000. That's her house, right? I mean, that's, and she is hoping for this work for 10 years in the public sector and then have those loans forgiven. But we know that that kind of a program is often just really fraught with all kinds of hangups, and they'll try not to forgive those loans. So yeah, this is a really important discussion to have. And if I just may say so, Cal State is still a really good bargain, right? Yeah.
Huge. I mean, and that was
Part of why you
no, it is. I mean, all of my graduate school debt is from undergrad, and I had told myself, you are allowed to go to grad school if you can pay for it, and that is one of the many reasons why there was a large gap. I graduated. Here did I graduate undergrad? 2003. And then went to grad school later on. I worked full time and I saved up the cash to pay for it. And I went part-time while working full time. I just was like, I can't dig myself deeper into debt. For me, grad school was a luxury in ways. Like I really wanted to do it. I had some very specific, as you know, Dr. Flager, some very specific research questions that I wanted to pursue and specific reasons for doing it. But I wouldn't allow myself to take on debt to do that. If I had needed it in order to get a specific job, then I would have looked at this like, okay, what the investment, is it going to cost me $30,000? How much am I going to make every year? Like, when will this thing pay itself off? But yes, Cal State LA made that absolutely possible for me to do. The fact that I could go part-time and still work was huge, even though the fees, I had like budgeted exactly, okay, it's going to take me this many years and this is how much it is a unit. And then midway through, they raised the fees, and then I'd already been like halfway in. So, I mean, it worked out fine in the end, but.
And I'll say too, like Nick and Colette, I think you both went to San Jose. So the Cal State system, oh, no, I'm sorry, Colette, you went to UCLA. Nick, you went to San Jose. The Cal State system is amazing. I don't know what we can do to like elevate the profile of Cal State system, because like I said, I'm in there with Ivy Leaguers, I'm in there with PhDs, I'm in there with USC graduates, and I'd like to think I'm holding my own. Cal State, is folks, kind of aspire to go to like UC or, like I said, Ivy Leagues, or get the PhDs or whatever, but I'm so happy with the education that I got from Cal State, and specifically through the history program was just like an amazing experience.
Yeah, totally.
Well, awesome. On that note,
well, with the MLS degree, I have to say that there are programs out there for you to help you pay for it. I know LAPL, I think if you're a page, you're able to have some of it paid off. So it helps you pay for that. So you just become a library page and you're able to get that.
Expired, but it really isn't, because it's just Colette, I have another question, because I'm really into your program, into getting an MLAS program, but I'm planning for it. I know that you mentioned UCLA does have good programs. I mean, not like good resources. So yes. What are there like? So I just want to know, because I'm like, maybe I might apply for UCLA. So I'm like, I want to know beforehand.
I would definitely apply for both UCLA and San Jose. San Jose is a little more flexible for sure to get in, versus UCLA likes to do the pomp and circumstance of saying this is how the amount of people we take in. We take in like only like 20% of who apply and blah, blah. That is a lie. They do take in a lot of people because there's very little interest when it comes to librarianship. A lot of people want to go to archives. A lot of people want to go into informatics. The thing that gets left behind is librarianship. If you show a passion for librarianship and you are passionate about diversity, especially in librarianship, you're golden into it. You have to do the statistics class for sure. You have to take that before you enter the program. You have to do the GRE as well. So that's another investment, the GRE. San Jose does not.
If I can add, so I looked into both programs. I made the decision to go to San Jose State because from what I understood, UCLA didn't allow you to work while you were going to school. The classes were typically during the day, whereas San Jose State, the classes were asynchronous and online. So that proved to be a big decision for me. That was a big factor.
Okay, because we're able to work, but in the libraries.
Yeah.
So on campus.
UCLA, right.
Yeah, on campus at UCLA, and you're still able to work outside. The program doesn't narrow it down. My best friend Jimmy from the program, who also graduated from Cal State LA, worked as a page at LAPL at the same time. So he didn't have any debts. He just paid everything as he went along. So definitely, you're able to do both work.
I'm not entirely sure if that still is around. I haven't
Yeah.
heard anybody talking about it. I know that the past few years, because of some budget cuts, it's been an issue, just cutting everything. So that might not be, I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
But it's something to look into.
Yeah, definitely budget cuts, because of even COVID has dramatically changed the way classes are offered, as well as how many people are accepted into the program. So go to any like orientation about for UCLA and San Jose, and like I said, apply to both, because at least you'll know where you stand with either one.
Yeah, I was gonna go to San Jose for undergrad, but then I decided to come to Cal State LA so I can stay for grad. Because for I know that I want to do not for either grad school or MA, so I was like, oh, so I better come close, safe.
Yeah, and you know, the MA history program is not out of reach. I didn't work, but I did look into a lot of ways how to pay for it. I looked for grants. I looked for anything, scholarships that I could pay for it. So it's not out of reach if you know how to advertise yourself, for sure. For money.
I have oh.
Julian, yes.
Oh, thank you. I had a question. Well, one for Colette and then one and another's for everybody. First, Colette, how did you get your job at LaSalle College Preparatory? Was that through networking or internship? Because that's also my alma mater for high school.
Awesome. So I got the job because I was an intern at Windward. So I was already doing something with like 7 through 12. And the job was advertised to the librarians, to the research librarians, and they told me about it. And that's how I got the job, is knowing that I was already in the field of school librarianship, for sure. And that's how it works mostly with librarians a lot, is like knowing who's in the field. So knowing what school librarianship looks like and have experience in that. Publics give you like public, having some internships in there. It was very, very helpful, because in the internships, they let you run your own program. Like I was able to do a bilingual children's story time. As an introvert, that was scary. So I challenged myself. So it's like, children, come to me. We'll learn Spanish and English together. So definitely internships help a lot. And like knowing how to network certain people. You don't have to like network and so towards everybody, just the person you're working with, and say, hey, this is my interests. And they will introduce you to other people.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question is for everybody is, you know, I know you mentioned UCLA and San Jose, but like, can you, if you're going to do an online program in an MLIS, can you do it at, say, an online program through an out-of-state school? Are there benefits or, you know, not benefits to doing it that way? And then, you know, with more information needing to be digitized, is perhaps getting training in like computer science or technology or some kind of certification and using like computers or programming. Is that an avenue for historians to maybe look at to see if there's job opportunities there? Because I know COVID's really digitized a lot of information for everybody. Yes. So, I mean, is this a new route that maybe people should be looking at beyond just what we traditionally think of routes to go?
Yeah, so digital humanship is a training you do within the MLIS program. You don't need necessarily computer training, Is it useful? Definitely. It will, if you, that's a passion of yours and you can get an IT degree outside of it, go for it. But they will train you on the job on the new programming, especially when it comes to archives or anything dealing with libraries. It's their own programming that they like using, so they'll train you how to digitize everything on the job, right? So definitely is great. Online, out of state, ones that I would be wary about, I don't know if you agree, Nick, is the out of state fees. Just because it is online, that doesn't mean they will not charge you out of state fees. San Jose is all digital, so you don't have to go in class. It's works with you. UCLA is not. It's in person. Like I mentioned, it works for me because that's how I learn. Digital, I will fall asleep. And that's basically how I learn and how I know I can do things. But definitely, if you just want an online program, San Jose is affordable and is there for you for sure. And just do the internships. Don't be shy. Do as many as you want.
Okay, thanks. I just didn't, what everybody else thought about, because I like the conversation about the degrees and finding ways, hustling, because I mean, it's true. Like, you really can't get out there until you get experience. And so sometimes that involves being creative. And so I appreciated that, candid conversation that, we think it's like, oh, the BA, the master's, the PhD, but I really think it's important for us to understand, okay, what other ways can we look to either get professional training or degrees that are going to get us hired? Because at the end of the day, that's how we pay off student loans and debt, is having an income. So yeah, but I appreciate everybody's comments today on the panel. So thank you.
Thank you all very, very much. This was a really productive and interesting discussion. Thank you, Gabriella and Colette and Nick for sharing your experiences. Cassandra just had to leave. So yeah, thank you for taking the time. And if I can make one pledge to everyone, come back, follow us on our social media pages. Let us know let me know how I can get in touch with you. Stay in touch with us as you keep moving, as you pursue your passions and have these enormous successes, because I think it's opportunities like this when you share your experiences that others can benefit. And we're recording this, we're going to post this, it's going to be on the Perspectives website. So that way we can all learn from you, and I so very much appreciate you all taking the time and sharing your experiences with us. Thank you. Michaela, do you want to announce the two winners? Because, we have that Amazon gift card, or two actually.
Yes. Oh, thank you, Jerry, for that. Jerry and let's see, DeJoberto, you guys are both our winners, and I already got one of the CIN and emails. Jerry, if you can just send me that. Oh, thanks.
Yeah, for ASI purposes, we need CINs and email addresses. So congratulations to our two winners. You'll be receiving those gift cards later today, and our presenters as well. I'll be sending those out today. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Enjoy the rest of your weekends, and I'll see some of you later. And Colette, I know there's a baby crying probably. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful day. Bye.